Good morning, and may I, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee and its members, warmly welcome you, officials from Evolving Tecknologies and Enterprise Development Company Limited, eTecK, Ministry of Trade and Industry, the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, members of the media and members of the listening public, welcome. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine the audited financial statements of Evolving Tecknologies and Enterprise Development Company Limited, eTecK, for the period 2008 to 2009. This committee is desirous of hearing from the key stakeholders at eTecK to learn of the challenges being faced and to determine some of the possible solutions and or measures to overcome these challenges. The role of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to help, and may I emphasize this, the role of our committee is to help eTecK improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. I must advise members and officials that this meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and its radio frequency 105.5 FM. May I take this opportunity to ask the chairman or the CEO of eTecK or the permanent secretary to introduce the officials from eTecK, and then we will go to the Ministry of Trade, and then we will go to the Finance Ministry Investment Division. So I turn over to the officials now to introduce themselves from eTecK. Could you just press that?
Good morning,
yes.
Mr. Chairman. Good morning, honorable members. My name is Robert Salandi. I'm the president of eTecK. To my right is my chairman, Mr. Imtiaz Ahmad. On my left, Ms. Maureen Singh, Vice President of Corporate Services. Next to Maureen, we have Mr. Hayden Alfred. Hayden is the manager in the finance unit, and perhaps the one who has been here by far the longest. Both Maureen and I only came here 14, but he has been here since 2004. So it's going to be a very great help in the exercise we are looking at this morning. And to my extreme left, we have Mr. David Coburn, who is a manager in our company. I just want to say thank you for having us here this morning.
Thank you very much. And the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Trade and Industry.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Chairman and members. I am Norris Herbert. I'm the Acting Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Trade. To my right is Mr. Randall Karim, who is the Director of Policy and Strategy in the Ministry. In the back row is Ms. Edwina Leacock, who is the Chief Technical Advisor at the Ministry. And we have Mr. Dennis Scott, who is the Manager of Business Alliances at the Ministry. Thank you.
Thank you. Ministry of Finance, Investment Division, you can proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Dennis Cox. I'm Senior Investment Portfolio Analyst, Ministry of Finance, Investment Division. To my near right is Mr. Shiva Ramrup. He's Business Support Analyst, Investment Division. And to my extreme right is Ms. Yvette Bab, who is Director, Social and Economic Transformation, Investment Division, Ministry of Finance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I'll now ask members of our Public Accounts Enterprises Committee to introduce themselves, starting on my far right. Mr. Foster.
Good morning, everyone. Chairman, members, eTecK, Ministry of Trade and Finance. My name is Foster Cummings, Senator, member of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Good morning, everyone. President, Chairman, and other members of eTecK and the Ministry of Trade and Industry and Investment, Jennifer Baptiste Primus, member of this committee.
Morning, Dr. Tim Gopi Singh, member.
Good morning. My name is Wade Mark, Chairman.
Good morning. My name is David Small. I'm a member of the committee.
Good morning. My name is Cherry Ann Critchlow-Coburn, member of this committee.
Good morning. My name is Sham Fakojo, member of this committee.
Thank you very much, members. And may I take this opportunity to invite the president of eTecK to make a few opening comments before we begin our exchange of views on this matter of the 2008-2009 audited financial accounts. Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me take these few moments to share with you information about the company eTecK. eTecK, as you're aware, is a state enterprise, and we fall under the Ministry of Trade. Our mandate, primary role and function really, is to develop new industrial parks, to maintain and manage our existing industrial parks. We also manage the assets of 2 hotels. In my overview this morning, I'll take the opportunity to share with you a bit about the origins of the company, the way our mandate has changed over the years, our current mandate, our vision, our mission, or projects that we engage in at present, some of our assets that we have, and other pertinent and relevant information I'd like to share with you this morning. The industrial parks, the origins really was with the IDC, the Industrial Development Corporation. 1960s, 70s, 80s, the parks really were vested in the IDC. And in 1994, TIDCO was created, and the assets of the IDC, as well as the Export Development Corporation and the Tourism Development Authority, were all now vested in TIDCO. And because of a large property portfolio, a subsidiary company, PIDCOT, was established, a property industrial company of Trinidad and Tobago, to manage the industrial estates. And PIDCOT became a separate entity, a state entity, in 2003. And around that time, the Honorable Prime Minister indicated to the national community that PIDCOT will oversee the development of a modern light industrial park at Wallerfield, where will also be the headquarters of the University of Trinidad and Tobago. So in 2004, eTecK, before that, there's a rebranding that took place. So we changed the name from PIDCOT to eTecK, because eTecK was now involved in developing this new modern industrial park at Wallerfield. In 2004, an investment portfolio and country branding was now an additional mandate provided to eTecK. So no longer was eTecK involved only in property development and management of its existing estates, but it was also now engaged in investment promotion in the non-energy sector. In 2011, 2 subsidiary companies were established within eTecK, InvestTT and the Asset Optimizing Company. InvestTT's role was to promote investment, whereas the Asset Optimizing Company was to manage and develop the existing industrial parks. In 2013, not long after, eTecK's operations were rationalized, and its mandate was refocused on real estate development, real estate management, and the management of the hotel assets. In other words, the investment component and portfolio of the company was removed. InvestTT was created as a company in its own right, state enterprise, and the asset optimizing company was dissolved. Cabinet, by minute 5:13 of February 28, made the decision that the sole mandate of eTecK be refocused along the lines of asset management and development and the facilitation of economic zones. So purely an infrastructure division, that's eTecK's mandate. eTecK's mission speaks to eTecK as a real estate developer in non-energy sector. We make suitable real estate available to qualified tenants. Our vision speaks to us as professionals in the industry to be highly reliable real estate development and management professionals, consistently developing modern economic zones. Of course, we have to attend the management of our 2 hotels, the Trinidad Hilton and the Grand Magdalena Hotel in Tobago. In the note to which I referred, in the minute to which I referred from Cabinet, the responsibilities of eTecK was clearly enunciated. And these are the following. eTecK will develop new modern economic zones. eTecK will improve the infrastructure and the operations of existing economic zones and industrial parks. eTecK will optimize the existing industrial parks on a commercial basis, and of course will manage the assets of the Hilton in Trinidad and the Grand Magdalena Hotel in Tobago. From what I've said, Mr. Chairman and honorable members, you realize that eTecK represents the infrastructure arm of the Ministry of Trade. Ministry of Trade being an investment the ministry, but we are its infrastructure component. What are some of the major projects eTecK is undertaking in this fiscal year? In terms of the development of new parks, eTecK has promised to deliver the Point Forte Industrial Park, and this was opened in November by the Honorable Minister of 2015. So that has been delivered to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. eTecK has delivered on that park. eTecK has also promised to deliver completion of phase 1 of the Tamana Intake Park, and by the end of this fiscal year, eTecK will deliver phase 1 of the Tamana Intake Park. If we look at the whole issue of the maintenance and management of our existing parks, this is the softer side of eTecK, but we appreciate the side where we have a large tenant population. Our tenant population is about 320. And if you have to deal with one tenant, you know how hard it is. To deal with 320, you could appreciate the challenges. But let me just share with you, we have a maintenance program that attempts to meet the needs of our tenants. But more importantly, I would like to share with you that this year, we are doing our tenant survey, because we maybe feel we are the best thing to our tenants, but they may feel differently. So our tenant survey is about to be completed. We, in fact, are going to be surveying more than 55% of our tenant population. We want to get as large as possible feedback from our tenants to know what they think of us. I mean, we get an idea what they think of us, to really know what they think of us. And that, of course, will inform our programs going forward once you get feedback from them. So that is about to be completed, and we're getting the data to analyze the data. I think it's a very important exercise as you attempt to try to improve the services that you offer to those who you are mandated to serve. I turn to the assets of the company. eTecK has vested in it, apart from the 2 hotels, 19 industrial estates. 17 were inherited. We recently brought in another 2 or 3 estates. In addition to that, importantly, eTecK has the head leases for 7 large parcels of land. And that gives us the potential to develop industrial estates as and when required. You must appreciate we cannot simply wait until our ministry says to us we need an estate and then look for land. We have to do a certain amount of planning ahead. We have these large estates. We have the title to them. You'd imagine the challenges that you face when you have land that is vacant and you have squatters. And if you are familiar with the issue Dow Village and the pressure that eTecK had to undergo, just because we were right, but we were not portrayed as being right. But in other words, we must protect our assets, and we'll protect our assets. And we'll continue working with the Commissioner of State Land to identify other appropriate areas for industrial park development. Because what we find is a lot of our areas right now are centered in the more central to the closer south areas, where the topography lends itself for industrial estate development. But certainly in the far reaches of our country, there must be opportunity to develop small estates and bring life and economic activity to those areas. So that's a very important element of our asset. And I would like to say to you, I'm extremely proud of the fact that after decades of not having a home or not having an office, eTecK finally has its own home and own office. We have moved to the flagship building at the Tamarind Tech Park. And by so doing, we have saved approximately $2 million in rent annually for accommodation is far more inferior than what we have. And I think for us, as a team, as a eTecK team, I'm particularly proud of my team in making the decision that we'll move there. We had our teething problems, we had our challenges, but we have moved in and we are proud of what we have. But unfortunately, and before I come to the unfortunate part, we are a small company, not very big, 80 members, 3 main units, a unit that relates to the maintenance of our parks, a unit that relates to the capital development, that is development of the estates, and the unit to which my Vice President Corporate Services is head, that refers to procurement, the ICT, the corporate communication, legal, financial, etc. But you know, Chairman, I sit before you here, not a very happy person, because it's unfortunate that I have to inform you that eTecK's audited financial statements have not been submitted from 2011 to 2015. We are in breach of the State Enterprise Performance Manual, and there's absolutely no excuse for such a breach. But Chairman, all I could share with you is where we are today, and I cannot give you an excuse. There's no excuse, but I can share with you an explanation. Permit me, with your permission. Chair, today we were supposed to have our annual general meeting to table our 2011 and 12 accounts, but we are here with you. So our annual general meeting will be held on Friday, where we will table our 2011 and 2012 consolidated audited financial statements, corporation sold. Our 2013 consolidated audited financial statements have been completed, and on Friday we are going to present that to our audit committee. On this Friday, A8. By following Wednesday, we'll go to their board for approval, and I then will be advised by my corporate secretary how to engage the Ministry of Finance to present it to them. Chair, we have been advised by our auditors in writing, and I've communicated this to the permanent secretary in both Ministry of Trade and Finance, the fact that our 2014 audited financial statements will be delivered no later than the 30th of June of this year. Our auditors have also advised that for 2015, our audited financial statements will be delivered no later than September 30th of this year. Chair, I cannot bring any consolation to anyone because we are wrong. I'd just like to share with you what may have caused this situation. There was a major hurdle we had to deal with, a major challenge. When both Maureen and I joined the company in 2014, we realized that our subsidiary, Vanguard Holding Limited, which is incorporated in eTecK in 2008, and Vanguard Holding Limited has a single asset, that is the Magdalena Hotel in Tobago. So accounts were never audited, and instructions were given to have the audit done in order to have consolidation. We didn't recognize and realize the magnitude of the task that lay ahead, because it appeared that during those ensuing years, there was a certain level of disorder. that led to the fact that there's a tremendous amount of cleanup that had to be done. And this cleanup could not be done internally by the company, and we had to engage a private consultant to work with us. And we sent some of our most experienced members of staff for weeks on end to the Magdalena, working with the consultant to do the appropriate cleanup. Chair, that has been completed, and that's why I can sit here before you and say today that we are in a rush to deliver. And when I was invited, before I was invited, I was begging your secretary to your left, go on, wait until we get our accounts in and then call me. Because I thought that the flak from you would have been less. I thought so. Nevertheless, what I can say, we have not complied. We are doing our best to comply. We will comply. 2016, I assure you, Mr. Chairman, all our members, we will comply in meeting our statutory requirement. And from henceforth, eTecK is going to comply with this situation. It's not pleasant for us. It has caused us some difficulty, but we put yourself at the mercy. Mr. Chairman, our members, thank you very much.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Mr. President. May I take this opportunity to recognize our member, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, who joined us a short while ago. Now, Kojo also introduced her here. May I follow up on what you have just raised by asking what mechanisms or measures do you intend to put in place to assure this committee that there would not be a reoccurrence of this sad experience where so many years of statements of a financial nature, audited financial statements, have not been submitted to the Parliament? As we go forward, Mr. President, what are some of the measures, some of the steps, and some of the assurances you would like to give to this committee that we will not have such repetition in the future?
Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned earlier, that the major issue impacting upon the late delivery of our audit financial statements had to do with our subsidiary. What has caused the situation? Perhaps a lack of oversight, perhaps a lack of staff. I assure you, Chairman, and other members that what we have done with immediate effect is that we have put systems in place to improve and tighten the oversight to the financial department of that hotel. Mr. Chairman, we have our staff, senior members of our staff, including our Assistant Vice President of Finance, visiting Tobago on a monthly basis with members of staff to review the work that is being done there, to ensure the accounts are being prepared accordingly, and to ensure that we receive monthly management accounts. I think through this whole issue of proper and effective oversight, this issue, Mr. Chairman, will never arise again. It cannot arise again. We will not allow it to happen again. And I say to you, therefore, I'm assuring this committee that we have in fact put measures in place to address the situation.
Yes, maybe our colleagues from the Ministry of Finance could probably step in here and to indicate to our committee what steps would the investments division be taking to ensure that this situation does not reoccur in the future. Because after all, the investments division monitors and assesses and evaluates these entities that fall under your jurisdictions. And for you to do a proper job, you must have these accounts before you to properly determine how they are performing. So could you share with us what, first of all, your concerns over this area that has been outlined by the President, the absence of all these accounts, and what steps you intend to take to ensure that it does not occur in the future, reoccur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing us the opportunity to bring clarity or to support in terms of the requirements of the Companies Act. We recognize that in 2008, eTecK had acquired the Vanguard Holding Limited. The accounts prior to 2008 has been, according to the auditors, they have been fairly, they had demonstrated true and fair view of the state of affairs of the company, and also in terms of the performance of the company prior to 2008. However, based on the acquisition in 2008, the accounting for the Vanguard Holding Limited, as the President explained, has led to a number of difficulties in terms of the accounting, in terms of presenting the consolidated account. We recognize that there are two ways we probably can treat with that situation, and which we have been engaged at eTecK in terms of having discussions, in terms of getting the accounts presented in the proper. We recognize that they can prepare separate financial statements so that the holding company, which is eTecK, can present a true and fair view of the state of affairs of eTecK as a single or parent entity, and in the meantime to have the professional accountants review the accounts of Vanguard Holding Limited so that you can bring Vanguard Holding Limited to a point where we can present the financial statement of Vanguard Holding Limited. Then we can consolidate Vanguard Holding Limited later down as a subsidiary company of eTecK. So we recognize that there are difficulties in terms of you acquiring a company that has poor records, and now you have to take the responsibility of accounting for this entity, which is your subsidiary, and the record is totally unacceptable. So we are working with eTecK in terms of bringing those accounts of the subsidiary company up to date so that we all would be in a position where we can have proper accounting in terms of the holding company and its subsidiaries. So we are working, Mr. Chairman, we are working with eTecK in terms of bringing those accounts up to date. I also want to add that I'm very pleased to hear from the President that we'll have the consolidated accounts presented up to September, by September 2016. We are very pleased to hear that because we have been talking in terms of having those accounts ready and be presented to Parliament in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you for your information that you provided to us. We are here this morning looking at the audited statements of 2008 to 2009, and you gave us a picture of what is happening now. But from PricewaterhouseCoopers, I don't know, I know you came in 2014, but you perhaps must have gone back to see what was going on prior to this. On page 4 of the 29 pages of the PricewaterhouseCoopers document of what they responded to on 2008, 2009, and this is for the investment division as well, you would see that the figures, the publishing of financial statements by state enterprises for 2004 was only published on 3rd of March 2010. So there was a 6-year lag. I don't know if you're aware of that. And in 2005, that was also published for the first time on the 3rd of March 2010. That's a financial statement. And for 2006, when Pricewaterhouse did this for 2008, 2009, it was not yet published. 2007 was not yet published. So what happened, I know it's difficult for you to answer, but in their recommendations, they indicated that there is a weakness in the financial systems in terms of the management of eTecK, the finance division. and they made recommendations for strengthening that area. And so it seems as though it's nothing new. eTecK, from its inception in 2004, has been lagging behind in terms of getting the financial records in order, because quite in 2008, 2009, 2004 was published for the first time. Well, this letter is here given to us on December 10th, 2013, but this was given for the first time in 2010. And I heard the investment, Mr. Cox, indicate that the investment division has been looking at this. Could you, both of you, give us some assistance into why is there this delay? Let's say when it started in 2004, it took 6 years for us to have the first set of accounts published. And then what was the investment division? Was there a concern then from previous years, from 2004 to 2010? I know there are concerns now existing from when 2010 to 2015. Could you give us some answers on that?
Okay, I want to talk on behalf of the Ministry of Finance, firstly, if you allow. The Ministry of Finance in 2008, we established, or we put forward a set of guidelines, the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual, so that we can regulate the behavior of state enterprises. So it was only 2008 that we had a document that we can use to waive or as a one to get the state enterprises to respond to the requirements, not only of the Ministry of Finance, but the requirements of the Companies Act, which are legal requirements, statutory requirements. So in terms of prior to 2008, there have been some challenges there. And without regulation or without some form of law or rules, we can find breaches taking place. That would be not, being reined in.
May I follow up on that, please? Because you're saying that these regulations were created and published in 2008, but the problem still persists following 2008, because based on the information that was just provided, we're in 2016, which is 6 years after 2010, and he's speaking about 2010 and 2011 reports still in the same position as those earlier ones. So if the regulations were created and provided in 2008, why does the problem still persist 8 years later, and what is being done? I think that's the same question that the Honorable Member Gopi Singh is asking. Do you have the if the reason before was there were no regulations, and now we have regulations 8 years later, why does the problem still persist? Is there any implementation, any enforcement? It's one thing to have the regulations and another thing to, follow up and make sure that what you've recommended is actually happening.
Okay, Minister, could you? Thanks for the question. I think that question is very relevant and pertinent to this situation. Our guidelines are not law. They are not enacted. They are not enforceable. They are just guidelines per se. What we do, we try to use we try to use moral suasion to have these state enterprises comply. We feel that at the level of the board has a responsibility to ensure that the organization comply or meet its statutory obligations. And being a state enterprise and a state board, we expect that level of consciousness at the level of the board. So we we use moral suasion in the first instance to have state enterprises comply with the guidelines that we have here. However, in extreme cases, we invoke, we use the stick. We advise minister or make recommendation for minister to take drastic action, which would include removal of the board for failing to comply.
Thank you very much. One follow-up question. Has there been any consideration in looking at creating some form of legislation to treat with this enforcement problem? Because over the years, and as we continue to examine these state bodies, you'll see that this is a problem that is not just found in eTecK. You would find it you'll find it across several of the state bodies. And if you look at most of the challenges that we're facing in financial management and the operation of the country's business through these state bodies, you'll find it year after year. We're talking here about 8 years, and we need to come up with some kind of plan because we can't just say it's a guideline and it's not law and just watch it happen. So has the Ministry of Finance or your division examined any recommendations or strategy so that we can rein in this situation?
Before you answer that question, I just want to consolidate further whether this manual, this State Enterprises Performance Manual, to what extent this could be translated into legal regulations. That's the first thing. And just to follow up on what Mrs. Kojo asked, whether the time has not arrived for us to have a legal framework to compel state enterprises to uphold, because they seem not to be interested in following the Companies Act, based on what you have said. In the case of eTecK, they are violating these guidelines. So what steps would you recommend from a legal perspective that would be essential to get these state entities to respect transparency, accountability, and to ensure that taxpayers' monies are properly expended and accountable for? I just want to get your view, just in addition to what Mrs. Shamfa Kojo asked.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for expanding the mandate. We at the Ministry of Finance have been talking to your Treasury Solicitor to see how best we can treat with this issue here, because we have a number of situations similar to what exists with eTecK. And we are trying our best to see how far we can go in terms of enforcing, getting this thing to the point of meshing with the existing legislation, and where we can invoke penalties in some areas where we can force them to comply. The Companies Act, per se, there are provisions in the Companies Act, and which we pull from and replace it in the manual, and still we have companies not complying with the Companies Act, which is a legal requirement. So by saying we need legislation, I mean, we are saying we need legislation, and we already have legislation, and you have companies violating the existing legislation. So probably there may need to be penalties rather than just simply legislation. So this is just a thought.
So the Companies Act in its current construct doesn't provide penalties for violation of the Companies Act?
The Companies Act makes provision for the submission of accounts, financial statement, audited financial statement every year. But there's no, as far as I know, there's no penalties or any provision to penalize a company. The Securities and Exchange Act, there are provisions for companies who are registered as issuers, and there's a penalty there. I don't know if eTecK is registered as issuer under the right, but there are penalties of non-submission of your quarterly financial statement or your annual financial statements.
I recognize Mr. Hines.
Yeah, I was simply agreeing with Mr. Cox. There's already a legal regime, and it's, as so often is the case in this place, it's about enforceability. And it appears to me that once the entity, and this might be a little controversial, but this is my gut feeling on the matter, once it is about the state and government, a whole different set of attitudes set in, and I mean, this record here is a very horrific one. And I agree again with Mr. Cox. It means, therefore, that the principals, the state, will have to ensure that those who are placed on the boards to manage these affairs, board and management, step up to the plate and do what is required. I'm simply agreeing with Mr. Cox on that particular point, and I reserve some other comments for later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to join in this examination here. My concern, Mr. Chairman, and this is addressed to both the investment division and also to the president and chairman of eTecK. It is just deeply troubling to me because what I've heard today, and I want to be corrected if my analysis is wrong. Part of the challenge with completing the company's accounts is that they have a subsidiary that has not completed its accounts. Okay, am I correct? So who's running the subsidiary? Is the subsidiary running an office in Miami? Where is the subsidiary? Who are the directors and the subsidiary? I have a concern about the governance here because I do not accept. Let me take that back. It is difficult for me to conceive of me being a chairman on a board, and then there's a subsidiary company that is violating all of the regulations, and we are not taking action. So that there's a failure of governance. There's a failure of governance, and it is difficult, even more difficult to accept. Because I'm not sure how the board was structured. Is it that Vanguard has a completely different board than eTecK? Or were there members of the eTecK parent board on the Vanguard board as there should be? So that if that is the case, it is a complete failure of governance. And I lay no blame, because I know the current president has only just come in. But we are dealing with a systemic problem here that is, according to my colleague here, is horrific. And I'm not sure what we need to do to fix that. But this is deeply troubling to me because I can't accept. You are a parent company, you have a subsidiary company, the parent is ready to account and the subsidiary is not ready. There must be at least one director from the parent on the subsidiary. So that where is the governance control? And that, for me, is the failure. That is the root of the failure. Because if the governance stepped in and said, you need to have your accounts, we wouldn't be talking about 2009 accounts in 2016. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I reserve my right. I have several other questions later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I endorse all the concerns that have been raised regarding the past accounts. Mr. Chairman, through you, I'd like to ask the President, whom in his presentation earlier made a very interesting comment, and I would like to ask him to expand a bit on that to help in our formulation, in understanding what were some of the challenges over the past. You indicated that there's a level of disorder that you all had to deal with. I would appreciate a bit of expansion on that, because I also heard you said that you all have put mechanisms in place. While I'm concerned about what happened in the past, I am equally concerned about the way forward. I have embraced the information that on Friday the accounts from 2011 to 2015,
2011, 2012 will be presented at our AGM on Friday. And 2013 audit financial statements are ready, and we will be presented to the audit committee on that same Friday to present to the board on the following Wednesday. And then the time frame that I mentioned had to do with 2014 will be presented on the 30th
of June and 2015 on the 30th of September. I heard you correctly.
Okay.
So am I to understand, or are we to understand that your accounts at this present point in time are up to date?
The answer is in fact yes. That's why we can deliver. We have cleaned up the subsidiary company. And that is why we can say definitively to you, as our auditors have said to us, we are going to deliver those accounts in the time that we have indicated, because the exercise has in fact now been completed. And from henceforth, honorable member, because your question is it ties in with Honorable David Small's issue, what have you done? I want to share with you, honorable member, that the board of the subsidiary company at this point in time is the entire board of eTecK. Our chairman, I know the point was made that boards should be held accountable and responsible, but let me assure you, when this board was only recently appointed, one of the first issues the chairman raised is his grave concern with the accounts. And in fact, because of the situation at VHL, and to the past, it's very difficult to go back because it's difficult. But I'm saying to you, this board has said that the entire board is going to be that board and that company. And now they are going to be very rigid oversight. And you ask what measures. We have strengthened our own internal department, our accounting department. That's why I can say to you on a monthly basis, there will be visits from our key personnel. And this forms part of the KPIs of our Assistant Vice President Finance to deliver those financial statements. This is part of her KPI. So on a monthly basis, we have strengthened the department. We have brought new persons on board. We have brought, we think, well-qualified staff on board. We have recognized the issues of the past. We are taking measures through, as I said, more frequent visitations, reviewing the accounts. If we have to engage additional personnel at the Vanguard Hotel in the finance department, well-trained, we will do so. But I assure you at this point in time, because of the situation, of which is not a very pleasant one, and we are taking the kudos for it.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank the President for the detailed explanation, because while we are sitting here examining the accounts for 2008, 2009, we want to ensure ourselves that this state company is not burning with additional issues. So I'm quite happy to learn that you all have overcome those problems and more stringent accountability measures are in place. But I trust that with the new board of eTecK being the new board of Vanguard, that we would not have a situation of literally himself to himself, not accounting to himself. But I understand, and I'm quite happy to hear that you all have cleaned up that situation.
Before you go on, I think Mr. Foster Cummings and then Mr.
Hines. Questions follow up to that?
No, you go ahead.
In relation to, I want to draw your attention to the PricewaterhouseCoopers document. And the first page, findings, A. And they're speaking about eTecK here, where it says the company's finance personnel do not possess, etc., etc. Can you indicate what steps have been taken to correct that situation?
Thank you, honourable member. I assure you very significant steps have in fact been taken to strengthen the department. But in order to elaborate further on that, I want to ask my Vice President, Corporate Services, to share with you what steps we have in fact taken. With your permission?
Sure. Thank you very much, President. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, honourable members. Okay, with specific the 2008-2009 management letters that were issued by the then auditors speak specifically to the bench strength in the finance department, and it was indicated that it was felt that we didn't have the requisite knowledge, skills, and capabilities in the finance department at that point in time in order to have the accounts prepared and prepared in a timely manner. So since then, what we have done is we've done a complete restructure of the entire organization, of course, which includes the finance department. In 2011, 2012, the finance department was restructured to have a position at a top level, which is an assistant vice president finance, who had the overall accountability and responsibility of the finance department. Of course, that is a highly qualified accounting position, so it comes with the requisite knowledge, so it's an accountant. Then there are two managers who are, again, of course, qualified accountants at that level. One is responsible for your receivables aspect, and one is accountable for your financial reporting aspect. So positions were recruited at the assistant vice president level, the manager's level, and then you had employees at that under those the managerial levels. All the positions in the finance departments are recruited based on qualifications, because they are specialized positions, and it's of course based on ACCA qualifications, analytical capabilities, and experience. It's a 13-member department from a 2-member department in 2004.
Just ask, you have now ready audited financial statements for 2011 and 2012?
That is correct.
That's what is going to the board, that's what's going to your AGM on Friday?
That is correct.
Has the auditor made any similar comments in relation to those accounts?
No. 2011, 2012, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
When we look at the said PwC report dated the 15th of December 2011, it is, quite frankly, when we look at the entirety of it, it is more than a litany of woes. I feel for the public of Trinidad and Tobago who are listening to us here today. They must be asking themselves, what's happening with their monies? How are we managing their affairs? They're listening. This is more than a litany of woes. When I read the pages of that 29-page document and see the issues, I know from my general understanding of things that some of these matters may not only be explained in terms of shortage of financial skills, as has just been put by Madam Singh. There may be other issues leading to this very poor state of affairs. Would you like to agree before I continue with that?
Honourable Member, I prefer if you could continue.
Yes, but I'm suggesting that it may very well be far more than deficiencies in accounting techniques or human resource capacity, as has been explained by Madam Singh. Would you like to agree with that before I continue, or disagree?
I prefer neither to agree or disagree. I think I cannot disagree with you nor agree. What I can say with you...
Let me press on then. You can reserve your agreement or disagreement. Let me press on. Have you been paying deeper attention to these woes to see whether there are other explanations than the one we have just heard?
The answer is, at this point in time, no. We have been focusing on getting our audited financial statements that are outstanding moving forward. We think we have taken the appropriate measures and steps to ensure that, as Ms. Singh had indicated to you, had indicated to the member, that some of the issues raised there, or the issues raised there, have not been repeated in our 2011 and 2012 audited financial statements. But the question you have you gone critically into that area and looked at it deeply? No, honourable member, we have not done so.
Because speaking as a member of Parliament and as a member of this committee, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, they are crying out for accountability. They want to know what went wrong, who did it, if anything went wrong. That's the reality of it. And let me bring your attention to two matters now that I have noted. At page 5 of the PwC report. Under the rubric New Matters, Unreconciled Accounts. You following me? You there?
I'm following you, Honorable
We have a list where they said we have noted the following balance sheet accounts were not reconciled during the year. And the risks, as they put it, the issues to concern us are: one, non-reconciliation of these accounts may result in untimely detection of errors, exceptions, anomalies, and is not in line with established best practice. Went on to say, expense reports may not be submitted on a timely basis, and the management accounts prepared during the year were misstated. Those are serious issues, right? You have a duty to look behind them. Don't you agree with that?
Yes, I do, and I want to assure you those issues at this point in time no longer exist. We have strengthened our department, and to give a full explanation to the points you have just raised. Now, we are looking at an audit for 2008 and 2009, and we have done a considerable amount of strengthening the company. And, Honourable Member, you speak to transparency, and I agree 100% with you. This present management and board place tremendous emphasis on transparency and accountability, because it's not just the taxpayers. I am a taxpayer just as well as anybody else. But to respond to that, may I ask my manager, who was here at the time, of finance, to the period to which you speak, to probably provide with some explanation as to the then and the now, with your permission?
Very, very much so. And before he gets going on that, I want to bring his attention to another matter. I am not an accountant, but my eyes have seen. When we look at the 2010 and 29 consolidated statements of comprehensive income, this is on page 4 of the 210 consolidated financial statement. Yes. Yes. We see here, right. We see here in this 210 report, under the rubric operating loss, it shows that for 210, it was 251.4 million. And for 2009, which is next to it, it is restated as 562.3 million. You see that? Now, in the 2009 report, at page 3, that operating loss for 2009 is shown in this document as 99.9 million. I would like, as a layperson in the business of accounting, some kind of insight into how that could be.
Honourable Member, with respect to your first question, I do not have in my possession the Pricewaterhouse management letter.
But you must be familiar with it.
Yes, and like as the President said earlier,
a copy will be made available to you now. And along with your general familiarity as finance man, you shouldn't have too much difficulty keeping step.
Okay. In 2008, represented the the year when we implemented a new accounting system. What had happened in 2004 when eTecK became an independent entity, right? The accounts were kept in Excel. So we had to move quickly to implement some accounting systems. What we did initially is that we implemented Peachtree. Subsequently, we engaged some consultants. They did a review of our requirements at the time and we subsequently implemented an enterprise-wide accounting system based on Microsoft Great Plains. And in 2008, what we were doing is that because of this transfer from Peachtree to Great Plains, we were in the process of reconciling all the accounts that were transferred. And some of these accounts at the time of the audit hadn't yet been reconciled. Subsequent to this, these accounts were reconciled and the issues were remedied.
You know, Mr. Chairman, I must say for general application, this committee has as a mandate to improve the governance in this country and in particular the state enterprises. Mr. Chairman, I must say, though this may not be the appropriate forum for it, this government is determined to achieve in that. Yeah? And we really, for me, and I have some more comments, but for the time being, I want to place on record now, we really do hope, because you see, in the meantime, while this state entity was operating, all the employees of the state entity that is eTecK would have been paid monthly their salaries in full and on time. And while all this madness was happening, and yours is not the only state entity, while all the madness is taking place, individuals are being paid. But the entity and the country continues to suffer. I hope, speaking as a member of this committee, that the assurances that we have had that this will not continue, I hope that they are real. Because eTecK, from its mandate, manages the Magdalena, it manages our Hilton. I mean, I have a number of questions and issues around that and others too, but for the time being, suffice it to say, yours is a very important entity based on your mandate and your responsibility. And the fact that you are a state enterprise alone, very, very important. That's part of the governance of my country, our country. And we really do hope, not just eTecK, all avoid us having to confront these kinds of issues in future again, especially in light of the simple fact that it pays our salaries. We are paid, never missed a month since 2004. Am I correct? But meanwhile, fire is raging around us. That cannot be right on behalf of the people of the country, and it will not be accepted by this committee since, as I said earlier, our mandate is to ensure that there is improvement in the governance platform, central government and the state enterprises that are responsible for a major aspect of the governance of Trinidad and Tobago. I'll content myself with that until shortly.
I recognize Mr. Sherian Coburn and then Dr. Tim Gopisi.
Mr. President, members of your team, I would have noted your statements with regard to your human resources and the fact that you now have the capacity. But my concern is that at eTecK, some of the things that would have happened were not directly as a result of persons not having the capacity. Because the same Pricewaterhouse report indicates that the company was in breach of the provisions of the State Enterprise Monitoring Manual. The company also is in breach of its own investment policy, and they would have failed to adhere to established policies and procedures. Now, persons may not have the relevant technical capacity, but at the very least, there's an expectation that they would adhere to policies and regulations. So this committee would like to be assured that you all have systems in place that can guarantee persons are going to be adhering to policies and regulations, or if they fail to, it will be detected and that some sort of relevant action can take place.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yeah, let me ask my Vice President to respond to that, please.
Sure, thanks. Mr. Chairman, honorable member, if you can permit me just to go through what exists in the organization now, can I do that in terms of the monitoring and accountability aspect? And you are everyone is absolutely correct in stating the reason why we are in the position that we are in the position now is lack of accountability and monitoring. That is all it boils down to. So since 2013 in the organization, what we've done is as follows. At the start of every year, the management of the company meet and we craft both our financial and non-financial objectives. The financial objectives are, of course, predicated on your recurrent expenditure and, of course, your PSIP allocation. So your financial objectives are set. And then out of that now, you have your non-financial objectives. Your non-financial objectives are dependent on, of course, your mandate from your line ministry and the objectives that you as an organization would like to achieve and the mandate of your board. So at the start of every fiscal year, we craft those. Coming out of that, we then develop what you call an operational plan, and out of that, your action plan. Your action plan is what you're expected to achieve or how you will achieve your non-financial objectives during that fiscal. We then take the action plan and we develop key performance indicators at the first level, at the executive level. So the board develops KPIs for the president drills those down to the vice presidents. The vice presidents then drill that down to the management. Management is then required to drill that down to the employee level. There ought to be meetings to ensure that everybody agrees with the established KPIs and sign off on those established KPIs. Once we meet and there's agreement, the KPIs are then entered onto the organization's performance management system, which it's an online system. And all the vice presidents are required to sign off on the online system. Usually we give ourselves a bit of slack in terms of having that whole process completed because, of course, we would like to know what our PSIP allocation is, what our board mandate is, and, of course, what our line ministry mandate is. KPIs are specific. We actually take the action plan, and based on your department objective, the KPIs are then drilled to your manager, and the manager then drill that down at a tactical level to the employees. Every month, we are required to do a report to the president. All the vice presidents do a report to the president. That is then rolled up at a board level whenever there are board meetings. So that departmental achievements is rolled up to the board at the board level. We then do reporting at the employee level on a 6-month basis. That's as at the end of the second quarter of the fiscal, and then, of course, annually at the end of the fiscal. So reporting at the employee level is 6 months and annually. There's another level of reporting on a quarterly basis, and of course it's based on your state performance manual requirements. Some of the reporting is done on a monthly basis and on a quarterly basis. We also report on achievements of the action plans to the Ministry of Trade. So line ministry require reporting based on your achievements of the objectives in your action plan. At the financial level, the finance department is required to do monthly management accounts, which again is rolled into your board reporting, and each department gets what your budget is and what your current spend is. So you know if you're over budget or under budget or where you're overspending to put measures in place. So all that sort of a reporting and accountability takes place at an employee level, at an organization level, and of course at a board level and line ministry level. It happens. It absolutely happens.
Let me break your stride just to ask a question. All of this took effect from when? This new, invigorated, wholesome approach. When did that take effect?
I would like to confirm 2013.
2013. And if that has taken effect since 2013, it's 2016 now, right?
Correct.
You mean we still are devoid of your consolidated, your statements, financial statements since then? And I think the last we've had is 2010.
Right.
Am I correct? Well, 2010 is in the precincts, but yet not formally so.
Right, but we also have completed.
But I'm just finding it interesting, to say the least, that these very stringent measures and the KPIs and all of that have taken effect since 2013, and we are still without these reports, so to speak.
Understandably
How
so.
do you explain that then?
Understandably so.
How do you explain that?
Okay. Remember, the account we would have given in terms of when we would have discovered that the cleanup of the VHL account was more extensive and exhaustive as we first anticipated. So, by and large, the cleanup of the VHL accounts from since 2008 has really stymied.
All of your attention. Yes. Let me ask another question. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Wait. You want to just follow?
Yes. Member Small had asked earlier, and I have noted that no answer was immediately forthcoming. I'd like to hear one. Who is the board? Who is responsible? What is the structure in respect of the Vanguard, that subsidiary?
Currently?
Well, yes.
All right. All of the board members of the eTecK board currently form the board of the Vanguard Holdings Limited.
And prior to subsequently, what was the arrangement? Not the same?
Some of the members of the board of eTecK form the board of Vanguard Holdings
And this
Limited.
brings me back to Mr. Small's question, which you could treat with after Mr. Gopi Singh's. How then, you seem to be unable to manage, if some, at the very least, to manage the issues around the Vanguard, the subsidiary, as opposed to the principal, the main, the eTecK. It's difficult to understand. And I'm right here close up.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, President. Okay. The Magdalena Grand Hotel is run by what we call an operator. eTecK engaged an operator in 2012 to manage the hotel. This operator has full control of the hotel.
Yes.
In terms of its day-to-day operations, in terms of its monthly reporting and its annual reporting. The operator has absolute, based on the agreement, the existing agreement, the operator has control. Again, it goes back to the level of monitoring on behalf of the parent company. Let's confirm that it wasn't at the level at which it ought to have been during those years, hence the state of the accounts.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. President and members, in keeping with what our fellow member, Mr. Hines, has indicated, the need for tremendous accountability to the taxpayer and to the nation as a whole, I want to refer you to the same PwC report of 15 December 2011, to page 22 of the 29 pages. I heard the President speak about the difficulty of obtaining and creating financial statements for Vanguard because of inherent difficulties. I didn't hear you mention anything about the Hilton Hotel, but the report also indicates that you have obviously had similar difficulties in getting eTecK to work with Hilton to provide the necessary information for proper auditing functions. And I would like to have your comment on the difficulties you are experiencing similarly with Hilton, which is recorded in PricewaterhouseCoopers audited statement. And I want to refer you to the same page 22 of actual versus budgeted expenditure on major projects in terms of accountability. And your finance director is here. And Pricewaterhouse finding is the company's major projects, which you said are Vanguard and Trinidad Hilton and Tamana eTecK Park. These major projects comprise the following, for which there were significant cost variances as noted in the table below. And you have Trinidad Hilton renovation. The initial cost estimate was $484 million. And the current cost estimate that is being reported on 15 December 2011 is $634 million, with a variance of $150 million overspending on the Trinidad Hilton renovation from 484 to 634. And Tamana eTecK Park, the initial cost estimate was $1.1 billion, and as reported as December 2011, the current cost estimate was $2.7 billion, with a variance of $1.6 billion. So just in two projects which eTecK managed, and from the report that Pricewaterhouse gave in December 2011, prior to that, this is report to management on 30th December 2008. Trinidad Hilton renovation had a variance of $150 million, and Tamana eTecK Park $1.6 billion. And there were comments from PricewaterhouseCoopers on the Hilton: termination of initial project manager, escalation in labor and material costs, and Tamana eTecK Park unbudgeted expenditure, termination of major contractor and related claims, scope changes to infrastructural works, example, underground electrical cables. Have your board, or have you as management, since you have been there, Mr. President, in 2014, as you indicated earlier, with your finance manager and your vice president, when she said that a lot of new work was undertaken for the financial areas in 2013, have you sought to have an analysis of this? And why should the taxpayers have had to pay $1.75 billion in cost overruns for two projects of the Trinidad Hilton and the Tamana eTecK Park prior to 2008, which is the report to management of 30th September 2008? Could you?
Yeah, Mr. President.
You know, in my closing remarks, one of the points I would have liked to make was the fact that coming here before, you gave me an opportunity to go back into these projects. I was going forward.
No, but you're here today to answer questions based on what we have asked you for 2008, 2009.
Yes, but the point I'm making, yes, I'm answering.
Okay,
but I'm talking the benefit of appearing before you today was the fact it forced me to go and find out what took place, because it is indeed frightening. You have a project estimated at $488 million, and you're asking all the taxpayers to pay $634 million. And I wasn't even thinking about eTecK, and as a taxpayer, I didn't know this existed, so I went into the records. You would imagine it's quite extensive. But first of all, let me assure you, Mr. Chairman and honorable members, that the project, first of all, Hilton. Let's take Hilton, for example, as the first project. $488 million.
That's the initial cost.
Correct.
But it cost in the end $634.
Correct, yes. Initial budget, $488 million. Approved by Cabinet, a budget of $484 million. In 2009, Cabinet approved a budget of $634 million. So approved by Cabinet. Okay? What is interesting to note, honorable member, is that the state did not in fact spend $634 million. It was approved by Cabinet, but the spend on that project, as my manager of finance has shared with me, is $508 million. That is a budget approved of $634, but I've been informed that what was actually spent was $508 million. What happened was that there are some elements of the work were not completed. Elements of work was not completed. And what we are doing now, a very structured, phased approach, is some of those critical elements. At the beginning of the fiscal year, we will meet with the general manager of the Hilton Hotel. And some of those areas which we think critical, for example, this year, using our own PSIP funding.
Could you stick up in?
I'm sorry.
For a minute.
Sorry.
The initial cost estimate was $484, and you said so far $508 million has been spent.
This is my information.
But there are certain areas yet to be done based on that original cost estimate. So if these areas which were supposed to be done with the estimate of $634 million, what would you envisage, having spent $508 million so far, that what was supposed to have been done and spent to account for the 634, how much do you believe that it will now cost you to do the other areas which were left undone and were partly included in 634 million?
Well,
what
our
would
approach,
it cost now?
Yeah, we recognize that there were some areas identified, works that were not done. But to what extent those were critical areas, important areas, we are not sure. What I'm sharing with you, I want to approach this, the response to you in terms of one, what we are doing now as a company. We have done a tremendous amount of work with the $508 million, the critical areas of the hotel. And as we go forward with the Hilton International, those areas that we think are critical, which we identify together with the management, we address. So this year, I'm addressing the pool and the terrace. Now, I want to speak to the issue, honorable member, of why the increase? Because if we were to complete the whole project...
Could I crave your indulgence and just ask you, what you're saying is where you want to go and what you want to do in terms of...
What we are doing.
Certain areas. What I brought to your attention was in 2008, which is 8 years ago. The cost estimate done as set by PricewaterhouseCoopers on page 22 is $634 million. Would you be able to provide any information of what went on then prior to 2008 that went from 484 to 634? I know you have plans to continue work and so on, but we're speaking about before, prior to 2008. Have you looked at it? You have your finance director there who can give you some assistance, who must have been there for a while.
Well, I will share with you some of the reasons that has led to that cost escalation over the period. First of all, when I looked at the review of this project, the point that was made, and it's unfortunate I seem not to have got that exact wording, that it was extremely unique type of feature. That is to refurbish a hotel as Hilton, a live hotel. You keep it open, and you're refurbishing a significant part of its infrastructure. I've been advised this is a unique feature, extremely unique. I'm not too sure it's been done anywhere in the world. In other words, you could not have closed down one of the biggest hotels in the country to do the refurbishment. What impact would that have had? So the approach was to refurbish while you maintain your hotel operational. that posed an extreme challenge to the company eTecK.
So to the extent that the variation would be a cost overrun of 150 million?
But there are a number of other factors. But I'll just give the context in terms of it was a project which was unique in its nature. It's not an issue of building a brand new hotel. It's a question of, when you build a home, a renovate a home, it tends to be two different challenges associated. The renovation tends to be more difficult, miserable, etc., than building a brand new home. And often you feel that you should implode this and build a new structure. In fact, if you look at the response we have given, I think I take note of the President of the Times response to this. And I may not agree with it, but it simply said, a hotel of such a nature, of such age, one will tend to implode and build a new one rather than attempt to refurbish it. I've heard that mentioned on more than one occasion. But I share with you the context in terms of the challenges that the company faced at that time. As I sit back and I read, I really empathize with the individuals who are here. In addition to that, the company really attempted to think out of the box for this project. They put in place, I remember, something referred to as a design consortium, recognizing that the nature of this project was perhaps beyond the capacity of our own country, because we have never done it. You then put together a consortium comprising local and hopefully foreign type expertise who are qualified, experienced, and can deliver. And the consortium had the mandate, and you find that the elements of the consortium, you find project managers, foreign, local, architects, foreign, local, designs, foreign, local. So you hope to bring the foreign expertise and the local to a unique feature, first time ever. Chairman, and Mr. Chairman, I remember, things that look good in paper sometimes are not equally good in practice. And when I read the scathing comments by the then chairman of the board, scathing comments, it shocked me because I've never seen such comments written on performance. As much to say, Mr. Chairman, I remember, the design consortium who by the way evaluated through a procurement process, came and made their presentations, etc. The fact they had to do project management, they had to provide designs, they had to provide a budget. Major difficulties with it, poor leadership. Bringing individuals from different countries working with yours, you could imagine the leader had. And out of that poor leadership, what happened? Termination. So when you terminate, you enter into the realm of difficulty. You have to terminate. You have to start back again. How do you start back? I make no excuse, but I can appreciate the challenges being faced. What about our local contractors? Are they knowledgeable? I read from the review, there's a lack of construction contractors in local market with specialized hotel renovation experience. So once again, what happened? You engage contractors through a procurement process, an RFP, you do your details, you do due diligence, yet the lack of experience is there and is manifested in poor performance of work. You have to again terminate. While that is taking place, the country is preparing itself to host 3 major events, in which Hilton will be the hotel of choice for many in terms of occupancy. You had the World Cup cricket in 2007. You had 2 major conferences in 2009, the Summit of the Americas and the Commonwealth Heads of Government. You're going through the project and you are enveloped in poor performances. Not through lack of due diligence or trying on your part as a company, but sometimes you're faced with challenges which are unique to you. And what I find was useful in this exercise was that the management at the time, the company were willing to make changes. It chose another project manager, again, difficulties and problems in deliverables in terms of budgets, in terms of scope of works. And as I said, the remarks and the comments of the then chairman of the board to the minister, it is scathing to the extreme. Eventually, we were able to, as I reviewed the information, to engage a consultant who was able to carry the job forward, to engage a locally based international contractor who was at the time doing some major work or some building work at a major hotel in the country and therefore had some experience. But time was not on your side because of the stoppage, start, etc. So you now had to rush your projects, expedite. It means there was a need for additional fees. You have brought on board a new contractor and you're now paying him to speed up the exercise. In addition, there were requirements from the National Secretariat for additional requirements. I think they wanted how many presidential suites more? 52 presidential suites. Suddenly the scope is changing. Through this all, you recognize there was increased inflation was also eaten away. Honourable Member, I cannot, the actual detail of each activity.
Yes, all right. May I just now look at focusing? Before you go on to Tamana, and then Mr. Small will come in, could you tell this committee, President, what time frame are we envisaging for the conclusion or completion of the renovation at Hilton? That is one. And two, what lessons are we to learn so as we go forward, if there is another renovation that has to take place in the future, what lessons can we draw? What recommendations would you advance to this committee arising out of that experience? Before we go to Tamana.
Lessons learned, Mr. Chairman. I mentioned earlier, if I had to do another renovation, no doubt I will seeking a consortium, because I certainly will sort of look externally for expertise to match with my local entrepreneurs, not just to build capacity, but you appreciate the local knowledge. But I'm not going to accept your paper CV and the nice words that they have to offer. I need very hardcore references. I share with you at this point in time, one of the projects we are attempting to deliver this year at Hilton is the pool. A pool is a showpiece of an institution such as Hilton. When you enter, you look at the pool. They want to resize the pool. We can prepare technical specifications. My local contractors can respond to those specifications. Excellent. Do they have the experience, the skill, the knowledge? Chair, I feel that when you engage in these sensitive type of activities, it's not wrong to pay a trip to see what has been done by people who say they know what to do. You can say what you know on paper. I know nothing. And I think the core of this was the fact that they knew nothing. And they came to our shores and presented themselves as experts. So I have a whole list of things in terms of experience, of lessons to be learned. But the first core lesson is know who you are engaging to undertake a sensitive and major, in any works, of course. But if you look at sensitive and major works, know who you are engaging to do so. And I feel that is an important lesson if I had to undertake such a project.
Do you anticipate the completion of this project?
Chair, we are not looking in terms of to complete the project. I feel we are looking in terms of a phased approach to critical areas of development. And this is what we are doing at this point in time. We are using eTecK funds, and we are focusing on two critical areas at this point in time. Next year we meet with the general manager again, we identify a critical area, and we so will proceed. But some of those areas at this point in time may not be necessary. The car park, for example, it's not very necessary at this point in time. This is our approach to the Hilton Hotel.
Can you go on to, can you give us, if you can, the answer for the cost overrun of the Tamana eTecK Park?
Yes.
With the initial cost estimate of 1.1 and the cost estimate as given on 208 of 2.7 billion, variance of 1.6 billion. Is there any?
Before we do, based on, please, thank you very much, colleague. Before we do that, based on the report of PwC, from the text that you have read, you will see, and I think you made reference to the comments on the right column, yeah? Where in respect of Tamana, it spoke of unbudgeted expenditure, termination of a major contractor and related claims, very similar to what we had been hearing earlier, but most poignantly, at the end, at the foot of the page, PricewaterhouseCoopers speaks about risks. Now, I gather, Senator Small, this thing called risk, I think it's a bit of a euphemism, isn't it? But they call it risks. Issues, I suspect it, well, how would you call that, if you could help me? If it's a euphemism, what does it really mean in accounting language, in dignified accounting language? It speaks to risk, but let me read it while Senator Small comes up with a definition, another one. It says, the budgeting process may be ineffective. See? And then secondly, cost control procedures may be ineffective, notwithstanding the fact that certain elements of the projects, such as these, are outside of management's control. Now, so they give us a clue as to what the issues are. And it would not be prudent to merely call it a cost overrun. So I make this intervention to protect the national interest, if you like, because, you know, in fairness to all concerns, PricewaterhouseCoopers gives a bit of an explanation here, but more than that, let me just take the opportunity, with your kind leave, Mr. Chairman, to say, while we vigorously and robustly put these issues as we must to those in front of us, what I'm hearing here is a very general applicability, and this stands for every development in the country and so on. I mean, just to say quickly, I had the opportunity to sit at a similar committee in the UK when they looked at the Olympics that the UK hosted. That was a massive billions of pounds project. And the kind of thought and the kind of deliberate plans and actions that go in, what I'm hearing here shows that these things don't really exist when we attempt major projects like this here. So it's really one of the lessons to answer your question. We really need to invest a lot more cerebral and a lot more time, power, and a lot more time and planning in a serious way. And I must say in conclusion, once the thing is a government project, there seems to be an attitude of mind that we have a fallback position. At the end of the day, it's not my loss, it's them on. That, I submit, is one of the reasons why we find ourselves in positions like these, for what little it is worth. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, well, Mr. President, thank you.
After you're through, I'll go to Mr. Small.
Thank you, Mr. Member Hines. As he indicated, written here by Pricewaterhouse, one of the risks was the budgeting process may be ineffective. So that's a budgeting process by eTecK and its consultants. But for a variation, a cost, all right, you had a little deviation. What I would say is a variance. What PwC is a variance from 1.1 to 2.7 billion, 1.6. As Member Hines indicated, of course, there are issues there, which he explained. But could you put your issues across to us to explain this variance of 1.6 billion?
I know that you said that these things are going to be very detailed earlier. So if you can give us a concise submission and submit in writing to this committee, alter more detail so that members can have the benefit of it, because time is of the essence. We have to conclude within a certain period. So if you could give us a summary to respond, and you can submit, including lessons to be learned. You submit that in writing. So the floor is yours again, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and honorable member, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines. You made a point which I agree to 100%. I always felt as a people we are laid back, except when it comes to projects, we just rush into them. And I agree with you. Often I've seen big projects, and there's a need for proper and detailed planning. And I think at times this represents what we see as the end product represents absolutely poor project management, lack of proper scoping of your works, proper risk management, proper scheduling, proper cost management, and that is the impact. But I want to come to Senator, the Honorable Tim Gokwising, Honorable Member, you said that the project initially is 1.1 billion. That was an estimate given in 2003. By 2009, the chairman of eTecK had didn't approach, but his revised budget was now by an additional $1.7 billion. I always like to start from the present. We have spent right now at the Tamina eTecK Park just approximately $1.1 billion. That was what we have spent. Yes. And what we have is at the end of this fiscal, eTecK will deliver to the people of Trinidad and Tobago phase 1 completed of the Tamina eTecK Park. Just quickly what phase 1 means, we have established our headquarters there. That is the flagship building, 130,000 square feet, flagship building established. We have completed the utilities building, which houses our plant and equipment to satisfy those buildings. We have established a 1.2 kV TNTEC substation on the park to satisfy the needs of our tenants on the park. We have also included a wastewater treatment plant on the park. And at the end of this fiscal year, we will have available to the community for investors 21 ready-to-build lots with all the infrastructure, all modern infrastructure, lights, roads, water. Remember, this park was touted to be a modern industrial park, where all our infrastructure lay below the ground with a very robust and strong telecommunication system involved. And we're going to have 21 lots available. That is what $1.1 billion spent, and this is what we have achieved. But, Senator, you're saying to me that
the phase 2, what
the
you
phase,
expect that
the
to
phase,
cost?
the phase 2 of the project, we anticipate will be to bring on stream an additional, approximately 32 additional lots, which should begin within the next fiscal year moving forward, which will take approximately 2 years to execute. The cost of that we estimate at $144 million. What we are doing right now, we have recognized the challenges of the past, and all what you have said today and this morning is indeed quite correct. Talk about inflation, poor performance, times of fund, they're all quite correct. Our approach to the project right now is a phased approach, but focusing on the point that Senator Hines raised, proper and thorough management. Far more emphasis being placed on proper project management.
All right, Mr. President, please submit the rest in writing for us. I recognize Mr. Small at this time.
Thank you very much.
And then after Ms. Kojo, and then Mr. Foster Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've listened intently to the submissions here today, and I want to place on the record before I ask my question, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, that there's a systematic failure of governance that has happened at this company, and that the excuses or the information provided regarding the subsidiary being on a frolic of its own, I don't accept. And I believe that the company should provide to us the governance arrangements of the parent and the subsidiary board for the information of this committee, so we could try to understand what was going on over the period of time that these accounts were not prepared. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask a question directly about the Trinidad Hilton upgrade. And here's the frame. I listened very clearly to the president, and he made a comment earlier about know who you're engaging. And often in Trinidad, we just rush into projects. And this is my concern. Why are we doing these projects? What is the rationale? And here's my logic. Because I need to understand, and I want the public to have proper information. If eTecK takes a decision to spend $500 million on an upgrade of Hilton, why are they doing it? When I look at it on a pure financial basis, I look at the returns from the increased returns from Hilton over the first 5 years or 6 years, total $150 million. And if I assume the largest number so far is 2015, 38 million, I assume 38 million and I add 5% going on for the next 10 years. When I do a DCF analysis, it comes back as a massive negative return. So I'm asking, when you decide to do projects, what is it based on? Is it that the Hilton is an infrastructure project of the government and we are effectively subsidizing Hilton because there's no cash on a financial, pure, discounted cash flow analysis? There's no return to the government of Trinidad and Tobago on the $500 million investment for the next 15 years. On pure numbers, yes, but we need to apply this because we all know that with the time, the value of money decreases. And I've run my own spreadsheet, and it comes back as a huge negative NPV. So I'm saying, when you decide to do a project, what is the basis? Is it that the cabinet tells you to do so and that is all you work with? And if that is the case, then someone should say, well, this is purely an investment project. The Hilton is an investment project and we are subsidizing Hilton. I would like to understand what is driving these decisions and then what is the supporting information so the public can be aware. Because I think the chairman, the president indicated before he joined, he's a taxpayer and he's shocked at what is happening with taxpayers' money. I am still a lowly taxpayer and I am shocked at what is happening with my money. And if my money is going to support Hilton International and the only benefit that is coming to the government of Trinidad and Tobago is jobs and taxes, but the money we spend, we will never get it back, then I need to understand. So one, what is the basis for decisions? Two, when you do your financial analysis, is there a positive return to the country on this project? Because you can do it two ways. You can look purely at the project, but you can also look whole country. You add up salaries, taxes, and do a complete analysis. And I have done this on several projects to get to a justifiable number that says, well, okay, we can get some total national benefit. But I am not hearing that from anyone. I've seen nothing in the submissions. So I need to understand what is going on within the company with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I can just simply say the decision to refurbish Hilton was not eTecK's decision. That's a cabinet decision. And we are guided by the cabinet decision. That's all I can add at this point in time.
Chairman, if you permit me, so that did the company do any time of financial analysis as to we're making an investment guided by the cabinet, even for internal purposes? Are we trying to understand internally whether or not this is something that yields benefit to the government? Because if you get a cabinet decision, I am sure that the company would have had an input into informing the cabinet, this is the amount of money we're going to spend. And a part of that process, if you're really rigorous, is to say to the cabinet, but we understand that the return, it is really an infrastructure investment, and the benefit is not really a dollar return for this money. I'm really digging into this, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not aware that we did that type of analysis. I'm not aware. It may have been done. I'm not aware.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would like to pose some questions. While you're on Tamana, I wanted to ask, when exactly would Tamana Park be open? Because I know in 2014, in March 2014, the last time you were here, the records of March 17 said that the park would be opened at the end of March. And later on that year, on June 27, 2014, the former minister would have unveiled a plaque signaling the opening of Tamana Park, and I understand today that Tamana Park is not opened as yet. So I would like to know, one, when would the park be really opened for real? My other questions are based on Tobago. In 2014, Magdalena would have boasted about being totally self-sufficient. And now, 2 years, or should I say a year and a half after that claim, I want to know, how did we move from being totally self-sufficient to now being totally dependent on eTecK? What would have happened from 2014 to now 2016? Secondly, what's your recommendations based on your experience in managing Magdalena? Do you recommend that we retain this indigenous brand of Magdalena Hotel, or should we look towards, should we pursue an international brand like a Hyatt or something else, right? My third question in relation to Tobago, because we could talk all day about Trinidad, so give me a little minute on Tobago, please. The third point is Rocky Point, better known to Tobagonians as Back Bay. That's under the remit, also under the purview of eTecK, and over the years, Rocky Point has not been properly maintained. The bush has been left to grow at very tall heights, and there have been reports of crime in the area, from people being robbed to attempted rapes and so on in Rocky Point. And this is under the purview of, under the remit of eTecK. I know that there is some move being made right now to transfer that property to the Tobago House of Assembly. What is the status of that arrangement? And right now, while it is still under your purview, what is being done as it relates to maintaining Rocky Point for proper security and upkeep of the area? And finally, eTecK owns 2.5 acres of land in the Shore Park area along Milford Road, near to where the Tobago House of Assembly laundromat is. What are the plans for that piece of land? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Let me see. Let's take the first question you raised, the Tamarind Tech Park. You heard several opening dates. But the question is, what is opening? Because we opened the building. So Tamarind is open for business, and we moved into the building. And then I just said, we are going to open the park. And I'm saying, the open the park at the end of this fiscal year, when the lots are available. So the park is in fact open. We have hundreds of people right now in the park. We have a tenant in our building. Employees, it's a call center. So at present, hundreds of people occupy the park in our building. But at the end of the fiscal year, we'll also bring on stream additional 21 lots to make available for investors. Does that respond to the opening? Because the opening is different in people's eyes. The building was opened, and a ribbon was cut to show the building is opened. And we'll also now open the park, the infrastructure element of the park. So lots are available.
But all your reports state Tamana Park now open for business. End of March 2014, June 2014, and now you're promising another opening date for June, July of this year. Maybe you guys should use a different term so that we're clear as to what your opening and our opening means.
I like what the chairman said, it's a phase opening, but I've just shared with you what we have. We opened the building, and we're now opening the... Second point you raised had to do with Magdalena. You shared with us that you indicated that in 2014, Magdalena was self-sufficient. Only in terms of its recurrent expenditure cost. We did not require any recurrent income from us to support them in 2014, but we still was investing in Magdalena in terms of the capital infrastructure. We do the infrastructure works there. That's what eTecK does. This year was a particularly bad year, it appears, for the tourist industry in Tobago. The level of occupancy dipped drastically. I've been told that the number of tourists, lost a number of flights coming to the island, and that impacted very significantly on the tourist industry and the visitors to Tobago. This I've been informed. In fact, I was quite happy to see there's a new direct flight coming from Munich in November directly to Tobago and then onward. But that, the operator shared with us, was a major factor in the whole issue of their poor performance this year, and that is why they have called on us for help in terms of meeting some of its operational expenditure. I also take note of the cabinet decision that speaks to Caribbean Airlines, working assiduously with 2 or 3 other ministries to look at the whole question of flight and airlift to Tobago. So it's promising for us when I see that cabinet decision taking place. The focus is on getting people there.
Have you also taken into consideration that for a period around July, August of 2015, because of poor maintenance of the property, Magdalena had to reimburse a host of visitors because you had problems with the AC?
That was the period. That took place not during July, August. It took place during September. September being the lowest period for the hotel. That is, schools are back out, so the local tourists have gone back to school or back to their business, and that's a low period for foreign visitors coming. It took place in September, but yes, there was a breakdown in the HVAC system, and we attended it immediately. We worked with immediately on it. We had our consultants here, our contractors here attended to it. It took a month of the hotel, and there was some fallout with respect to that. I'm aware of that, and we have taken steps to address that situation.
And what about the other maintenance issues?
We are very much engaged in maintenance issues. This year, for example, there are a number of areas of maintenance which in fact been addressed. You're familiar with the hotel, I imagine. You know the lobby glass that may leak, that is going to be repaired. The HVAC system as well, the fire alarm system, the locks on the door, the pool. All these are areas to be addressed using the eTecK budget. And we are, in fact, at this point in time, doing the tenders to get those projects going. Madam, one member, the hotel is critical to us. It's your only 4-star hotel in Tobago, as important to the country in terms of tourists. So we take this hotel extremely seriously, and therefore we do all in our endeavor to ensure it maintains its 4-star status. You
and you would agree that from the list of items for maintenance that you've just mentioned, we've been talking about those same items for a couple of years, yeah? You would agree? Based on the reports from Magdalena.
To a certain extent, yes. I will not disagree with you, Honourable Member, I would not. But this, I say to you, commit ourselves, we have the funding, and we understand, appreciate the hotel. Not only that, but remember, I think Cabinet made a decision that we want to engage a long-term operator for the hotel. And as such, if you need to do that, you need to present, this is not the reason, but certainly you need to upgrade and present your facility in a certain fashion as you attempt to attract your best possible operator, hopefully with brand, come into the environment. But the key thing, we have committed ourselves to do critical works this year on the Magdalena Hotel. You raised the issue of, let me go to the easier ones before I come to the last question that you asked of me, the Rocky Point versus Black Bay. Yes, we have that property. It's vested in eTecK. I was not aware that steps are being made to move it from eTecK to the Tobago House of Assembly. I was not aware of that. You have also now shared with me there's a maintenance issue, and and until you mentioned it this morning, I was definitely not aware of it.
So, the fact that this piece of property has been under your purview for these years, what have you actually done over the years to maintain this property that's under your purview? To maintain the upkeep and to keep it secure, taking into consideration its location?
As far as I'm aware, what we have done is only to ensure that no squatters on the property. But we have done nothing else in terms of in terms of nothing. We have done nothing else. We have done nothing else. And what surprised me in that question is I spoke with the Chief Secretary of months ago, but the point he was raising with me is the issue of perhaps squatters coming property was concerned, and he said to me, ensure that there are no squatters. But until you mention it, it's the very first time. But what I say to you, I'm going to look into it, because I think it's an important issue, and measures will be taken to at least cut the grass to ensure that crime is not impacted upon. And finally, you speak, and I present information to you in writing on that. And you speak about a 2.5 acre of land. I need to get back to you on that. I'm not aware. I'm really not aware. You also spoke of the last point you raised had to do with the issue of a small type hotel institution vis-a-vis branding of a hotel, international brand. I think that's the point you raised. You comparing a small, like EFM as it is at present, international, what you thought was better from our own experience. Was that the issue you raised?
No, the question actually was, do we think we should retain the local brand and management, or try to bring Magdalena under a more internationally recognized brand, if that would be of any benefit to the operations of the hotel?
I do feel, in fact, an international brand will, in fact, raise the profile of the tourist industry in Tobago and belong to the benefit of Tobago. That's my personal opinion. I'm not an expert in the industry. I think experts may have a say on that. But I do feel it could add value to the tourist sector. And that's my position, personal position.
All right. Mr. Foster Cummings.
Thank you, Chairman. That sort of answered some of the questions I had. But before we move off the Tobago property, the Magdalena, it was said earlier that the operator came on board in 2012. Is that correct? Could you inform the committee how this came about? How was the operator procured?
I may not be able to provide information with respect to that. I've seen no records. I've seen records, not of that item, so I am unable to provide you that information. I could continue to.
Is there anyone?
I could respond to you in writing on that matter. But
Is there anyone who was at the company at that time who would have information as to how this operator came on board? Is it?
I really, honourable member, will have to get back to you in writing on that matter.
All right, well, you'll submit that in writing to us, okay?
Yeah,
Continue, Mr.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you inform the committee in terms of the tenure of the operator? What is the term of the agreement for how long this particular operator is supposed to?
This operator has been there now for 3 years. He has had yearly extensions, but Cabinet in its recent deliberations, I have seen in correspondence addressed to me, have indicated that we will now engage this present operator for additional 3-year period, but there's a 6-month pull-out clause. That is, if we, during that period, we are able to engage a long-term operator, because the ultimate aim is to have a long-term operator for this institution. And once we have engaged them, we just provide a 6-month notice without any penalty. But in the first instance, we have been advised that the current operator should be engaged for an additional 3 years, with effect from 2016 to 2019. That's what I've been guided by.
So am I to understand that in moving forward, that eTecK's plan would involve getting the plant up to the standard where you would be able to attract an international brand to operate that plant?
Yes, that is in fact the intention.
Okay, you've answered my question. Just moving, I just want to make one note. The chairman did indicate that we should get some additional information with respect to some of the questions that were posed by Member Gopi Singh in relation to findings of the PricewaterhouseCoopers on page 22 of their report. Now, I just wanted to get to note, and correct me if I'm wrong, these initial cost estimates are 2003 figures, and where we see current cost estimate, those figures relate to a further period that would be 2009. Am I correct?
Yes, I've been advised that is indeed correct.
All right, so can I just ask in that, submit your additional information, because I get the impression as we were deliberating earlier on that there is some assumption that what is referred to as current cost estimate is in fact expenditure. It's not expenditure.
I've been advised it's not expenditure.
Okay, so in your further submission, could you please clarify that for us for the benefit of the committee and indicate where necessary, if there were scope changes that inform those increase in expenditure, so that we have a proper understanding of the information before us, please.
Honourable Member, I also do.
Thank you.
Dr. Kobison, and then
In keeping with the question by Minister Kojo, in terms of the thinking that you may be having now and carrying it from Magdalena to an internationally recognized hotel chain, my recollection is that what is now Magdalena was previously Vanguard, and what was previously Vanguard was Hilton. Could you enlighten us from this committee on a national level, if you have the information, when Hilton sold over to Vanguard, what was that cost? And then Vanguard sold over to Magdalena, what was that cost? And then how much money was spent to refurbish? Because from Vanguard to Magdalena, it took a long while in abeyance, nothing was done. And how much was spent to refurbish when Magdalena owned it to its present situation? If you have that answer, we'll appreciate it, ballpark figure, or if you don't, we will ask your submission for that.
yes, if you have the figures, you can provide us. If not, Please submit it in writing.
Just
Or
a
give us
rough,
a
a
give us a
ballpark.
rough figure.
From Hilton to Vanguard and Vanguard to Magdalena.
Okay. I've been advised on both sides. Put the actual information. So I've been advised that $138 million was the purchase price.
For the purchase of Tobago Hilton.
For the purchase of the Tobago Hilton, I've been advised that $138 million is the purchase price.
No, hold on. Mr. Karim is trying to, can we hear Mr. Karim on that?
Yes, thank you, Member. The hotel had belonged to Vanguard Holdings, well, Hilton had shares in Vanguard Holding as well as Tobago Plantation. But when the government took a decision in 2008 to purchase the hotel, it paid $138 million, the equivalent TT, the equivalent of $138 million for the shares of which Trinidad Hilton had in Vanguard Holdings. So there was no further transfer from. There was not two transfers. That's one purchase of shares. So 138 million TT was the purchase, and then approximately $160 million was the full cost of renovation to get the hotel opened in 2012. Because immediately after the purchase in 2008, the hotel was closed for about 2 or 3 years. So it's 160 million refurbishment, 138 purchase.
A less exciting issue, a more mundane one actually. I'm back just to conclude to the summary of responses. I know you all provided a whole lot of written responses, but I'm dealing with the summary now, and I'm on page 18 of that. One of the questions that you were asked to respond to was the question of a fixed asset policy, and the discussion that just ensued brought me straight to this. If we are talking about repairs and all of that, the revelation that we, at least up to the time of this report, did not have a comprehensive fixed asset register for building improvements and furniture and fixtures and equipment was troubling. And of course, if we're going to be doing repairs and so on, so the other question that arises is what systems are in place for proper record keeping of invoices and acquisition of cost of equipment and those kinds of things, because these things are important. I hope, and I would like to hear for the record, whether this has been rectified, whether we now have a fixed asset register and whether we have a proper system of record keeping. All that I say is applicable to you, but of general applicability in this country. And I want to say, for what little it is worth, as I conclude, I just did a little Google here and I saw that the Hilton, up to last year, around the world has been showing signs of profit. Thank you.
And responding, I just respond to the last matter, signs of profit, and we do benefit a bit from that profit because we see our income from Hilton rising.
Well, this is happy news.
Yes, but in response to the earlier question that you raised, I'll ask my manager of finance to respond to the fixed assets and your concerns.
Thank you very much. And I want assurance, if I can be given, that the situation is rectified and going forward we have solved that problem.
With respect to eTecK, we have a fixed assets register. With respect to Hilton, we have a fixed assets register. We have to effect a fixed asset register for Vanguard now, for Magdalena. And that process, we are about to engage, do the RFP and engage the consultants to do that.
I conclude to say make haste.
Your comment is noted.
We are all being paid.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick couple of questions. Could the finance man, the person responsible for finance advising, what is the estimate of the current accumulated deficit of eTecK? Or if you don't have it, you don't have any idea how close to an estimate. We like the exact numbers because we haven't received those numbers, but I'd like to understand the accumulated deficit. What does it stand at now? You have any idea?
Well, could you provide us with that in writing?
I will be able to provide it in writing. I'll be able to provide an exact number in writing.
I'll allow.
Yes. Mrs. Batiste?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, I've sat here and I've listened with great interest to the discourse that has been taking place. You have been with the organization, you said, from 2014?
Yes, that is correct.
From 2014 to now, and I'm asking you for your personal assessment here because you have been in a leadership position in the organization. Would you say that eTecK's core operations is profitable?
I'm not sure what we mean by profitable. If it means that the returns we get from our real estate meets our operating expenses, yes, we do. But I see our mandate is far greater than mere profitability to the company. I think our key mandate is being a landlord and providing this space for the kind of investment that will deal with the issues as a country we face today. We are faced with significant issues. You need businesses here. You need to generate employment and generate foreign exchange. I think eTecK has this critical role to play, and I think we are playing an extremely good role. As I mentioned, within the last year and a half I've been here, we have opened the Point Forte Industrial Park to bring additional tenants on stream to create employment. By the end of this fiscal, we have additional 21 lots. So I see it in the context of the contribution we are making to the country. But if you ask the question in terms of a pure cash flow approach, whether our operating expenses, and I may have mentioned this earlier, that we do not approach the Ministry of Finance to meet our operational costs for the company. In addition to that, the maintenance to which I speak of the industrial estates, we use our own funding that we generate from our internal assets to meet that. You speak about the capital projects. When I refer to the capital projects of the hotels, we don't approach the state, which we have done in the past for funding. We recognize that we must take, particularly in these circumstances, we must take our responsibility, and whatever income that we realize, we are going to give that back, not just to maintain our own costs, but to maintain the assets that we have. And yes, we have PSIP votes, on which we could ask for funding, but we have taken the position that we are going to reduce that dependence on the Treasury, and we're going to use the income we generate to maintain our assets. So I've answered the question from that perspective. I do not know if I have been able to deal effectively with what you're asking. Have I?
Just a follow-up. While it is important to draw lessons from past experiences, I am more interested in being given the assurance that the company has a clear vision as it goes into the future. I recall Ms. Maureen Singh, your Vice President, indicating the fundamental changes that have taken place over the last couple of years. And at the beginning of each year, financial, non-financial objectives are set, and then it's converted into action plan. Give this committee some degree of assurance that as you go forward, for example, for the next year, what can we expect to emerge from eTecK?
First of all, the company has a very clear vision going forward. You must appreciate that our vision, our plan, our strategic plan is not done in isolation. We are part of the Ministry of Trade. So at this point in time, for example, as the Ministry of Trade is working on its strategic plan, we are also together working our own strategic plan to ensure that there is coherence and congruence between the two plans. And of course, you identify clearly your strategic objectives. When my Vice President spoke to our operational plans in the context of those strategic objectives, rolling down to our operational objectives, our plan, into our action plan. So we have a very clear vision of our direction going forward. There's no doubt about what we plan to do, what we intend to do. And you asked me the question, what are you looking at for this year, this close of the fiscal year? And I mentioned earlier that we intend to bring on stream 2 additional industrial estates, the Point Forte and the present Terminal eTecK Park. If you ask me, and what about the next year? What are your plans as you start thinking next year? We continue to talk about bringing on stream additional industrial space to provide for investors. For example, building out the Terminal Park again. We are an implementation division, and therefore we work very closely with InvestTT, with the Ministry of Trade, as we move forward in our implementation.
Ask 3 questions. First of all, to the President, then to Mr. Cox, and my last would be Mr. Herbert, Acting Permanent Secretary. Mr. President, what specific recommendations would you wish to advance to address the issues of transparency and accountability at eTecK in particular, and as we chart the way forward? That's for you. For Mr. Cox, what lessons have the investment division learned from today's experience, especially on the issue of oversight of eTecK and recommendations on the way forward? And to our distinguished Acting Permanent Secretary, what is the role and responsibility of the Permanent Secretary in ensuring that audited financial statements are submitted on a timely basis? And is the Permanent Secretary satisfied that the way eTecK is currently functioning, and what can be done to improve the operations of eTecK? That is the question I'd like to put to the Permanent Secretary. So, Mr. President, you can start, and then Mr. Cox, and then finally the Permanent Secretary.
Strengthen the functionality of the company. Let me share with you, it was in 2013 that eTecK established a department for audit. So we now have on board our auditor, internal auditor. I think that's a very important feature of the company, because the internal auditor is independent. He does not report to the president. He reports to the chairman of the audit committee. And at the beginning of every fiscal year, he prepares his audit chart and his audit plan, in which the chairman of the committee has to approve it. And the audit plan really speaks to reviewing and auditing all aspects of the company's operation. I think that has been a very important feature of the company within the last couple of years, because we can initiate controls and measures to ensure compliance and accountability and transparency. And if you're not under continuous audit, you're not too sure if they're being effective. The internal audit gives an additional instrument by which he is able to review the controls, the processes that we have in place. Those audit reports go to the management of eTecK, who have to review them, and are held accountable. They are presented to the president for review, and of course they go to the board audit committee. And I don't have the time to share with you the extent of what it has been done since he has been brought on board. And as I said, I think that is a significant feature. Compliance, our audited financial statements, I don't want to continue to pursue that, but we need to bring them up to date, and we need to have them prepared promptly and on time, and have them reviewed critically to ensure that we are compliant and we are transparent. But critical to our operations is the fact that there's a state enterprise performance manual. And we must appreciate that there's nothing in law that binds us to it. I think there's an issue of integrity, and that binds you to it. That is your manual, that guides you. When you talk procurement, I always say match your procurement against the state enterprise performance manual, because I like what it says. I like what it speaks to, you need to call emergency measures. You know, that's an abuse term, emergency. I like how this state deals with emergency issues and the controls in it. And therefore, In this way, we must ensure compliance in all areas, whether it's legal or not. That's not the issue. The issue is about transparency and accountability for each and every funds that we put our taxpayers. So in these 3 areas I share with you, this is how the company attempts to deal with transparency and accountability.
And remember, any additional points you wish to advance, please commit them to writing and submit them.
I will do
Mr.
so.
Cox?
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity to give the Ministry of Finance perspective on what we learned today. Firstly, I would say that our major challenge is being highlighted, or are being highlighted, in fact, that the use of the performance monitoring manual without legal status doesn't allow or doesn't encourage state enterprises to adhere to their good corporate governance principles. So therefore, we see the need in terms of the way forward. We see there's a need to giving us teeth so that we can use coercion rather than continue using moral suasion to little or no effect. Secondly, I just want to raise the issue in terms of the board and the senior level management in terms of their perspective in running a state enterprise. I think the focus should be redirected in terms of establishing systems of internal control, because you need these systems of internal control so that you can prevent fraud, I use the word fraud loosely, and irregularities, in that if you are not recording or properly recording your transactions, you would have the issue, which would be perennial in terms of the auditors giving you a qualified account because you are not accounting or recording your transaction according to international accounting standards. So there's need for internal control, a robust system of internal control to treat with the recording of your accounting transaction. I know it is very challenging, especially when you deal with a subsidiary, which is outside, physically outside your control. But at the level of the board, you should ensure that the subsidiary established, put in place, and that you are satisfied that the systems of internal control, whereby they can narrow the gaps, because your stakeholders or your third parties, those that you treat with, they can take advantage of those cracks in your internal systems and take advantage of you financially to expose you to greater risk. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. And I must say that eTecK is one of the 15 agencies that fall under the ministry. And for us, myself, I got into the position sometime in 2014 also. And we have been working with a number of the agencies, including eTecK, to at least to try to get their records up to at least management level, because that's the first stage before it moves on to being audited and submitted and that sort of thing. I think that we have made some progress in that time, and we look forward to having the September deadline met, and thereafter to move into the stage where accounts are submitted 4 months from the end of the fiscal year, and that is a goal we set ourselves. With eTecK, we hived off InvestTT, which was the investment promotion, and eTecK still does some financial management for InvestTT in terms of the processing of the records and that sort of thing, and payments and that sort of thing. So we are working to have that compliance level in place. This morning there was the whole discussion about the difficulties of that effort, but we are working to try to reach that place. Chair, also in terms of the overall functioning of eTecK, eTecK moved from a strategic plan which expired sometime last year and in unison with the ministry's plan. And we are trying now to get some more coherence between the objectives we set at the ministry level with the element of eTecK strategic plan. Because as far as we are concerned, eTecK is an implementation entity in the sector. So we are working towards that coherence, and also there's the issue of the responsibility of the boards and management. As permanent secretary, I have instituted monthly meetings with the boards, eTecK being one of the boards, where we go through the list of requirements in the state performance manual. And where there are gaps, we try to implore on them. We don't have the big stick, but we implore on them to fulfill those gaps. So we are working to have those elements put in place so that the day can reach when eTecK is in alignment with all the requirements of the state performance manual. So, Chairman, thank you.
All right, finally, Dr. Tim Gopi Singh and Mr. Small.
The last question.
Wrap up.
This is to provide a little guidance for the finance director and for the president when asked by Mr. Small in terms of the debt and so on, the liabilities. In your response, the summary of the responses from eTecK to questions raised on the audited financial statements for the period 2008-2009. On page 14, you indicated that you were asked what major transactions did the company undertake. Provide a copy of all major transactions. And in it, you stated the major projects, the development of Tamana eTecK Park. And you have a debt in the amount of $148 million and associated interest. And for renovation of the Trinidad Hilton, you have debt in the amount of $488 million and associated interest. And for Bamboo Networks Limited, investment in Bamboo Networks Limited, debt in the amount of $30 million and associated interest. So if you are to sum up these, 488 plus 148, that's 636 plus 30, $666 million in debt in these three areas, Tamana, Hilton, and Bamboo Networks, plus associated interest. Where do you stand as eTecK when you owe $636 million plus interest by eTecK at the moment? Could you give some answers on that?
Yes, Mr. President.
I will ask my manager to respond, please. Thank you.
With respect to the eTecK debt, all of it is guaranteed and is being serviced by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. It's being paid by the state. It's the same, all the debt.
If you are saying that the debt is being serviced by the state, could the permanent secretary give us some assistance? How is the ministry helping eTecK to service the $660 million in debt?
Chair, through you, to the member, since I've been in the position, there was one payment that was made by eTecK, and the Ministry of Finance services these debts directly. So the Answer McCall debt, which is for the Hilton, they pay that directly, and the other debts, the Ministry of Finance services these debts directly. So it doesn't come into the coffers of the company.
That is, those debts are paid for separately by the Ministry of Finance, and so eTecK, but does eTecK undertake the responsibility in terms of having to manage all of this at all, or they just Ministry of Finance pays it directly and leaves out eTecK from the whole picture?
It's direct. It's direct. There was a time when there was a debate about whether eTecK can pay some, but it has been direct. In it.
So could it just,
like, for instance, Mercal that is paid half yearly, and Ministry of Finance pays that from their coffers to the recipient.
What we will do is to write to you, Trade, and to eTecK some of these questions, and you'll provide more detailed answers for us. I'll ask Mr. Small to ask the final question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask a question, but I think I'll phrase it as a suggestion. Given my understanding here is that eTecK, I understand that they're not necessarily profit-driven. Has the company ever done a value for money audit? Has the company, is that something that, and this is probably for the Minister of Finance also, because in other jurisdictions where you have entities that are essentially running on state funds and are taking directions from the cabinet, there's something called a value for money audit, where you bring in an auditor to establish so that citizens in the country understand or have a view as to whether or not maximum value is being extracted from the expenditure of taxpayers' dollars.
For your answer, that's a question that we may wish to raise with the Auditor General, because we would have, as a committee, to look at that issue as well, concerning not only eTecK, but other state entities. So, Mr. President, I think this is a good point where, on behalf of this committee, I'd like to extend our appreciation for your presence and your presence of your officials accompanying you. Also, the Acting Permanent Secretary, Mr. Herbert, and of course, Mr. Cox and his team from the Investment Division. We look forward to all your written statements to be submitted, because at the end of the process, we would like to improve the standards in terms of delivery of services of eTecK to make it more efficient, more effective, and more economical in its overall operations. I would ask you if you have any final closing remarks to make, to do so at this time.
Mr. Chairman and honorable members, when I was heard I come before the Public Accounts Committee, it was not an easy issue to fathom. I had some sleepless nights. Let me just share with you that you have made some comments and recommendations here to me today, which I generally believe that you're not here just to be inquisitive and interrogative, but really to drive the performance and improve the performance of the company. From what I've heard, even the last issue raised by the honourable member, and I asked my VP, have you done that? Said no, but it's something that in fact I should do. So I appreciate your comments from each and every one of you. I thank you for these comments. Certainly, as my team and I return to our offices, we will sit and we deliberate on what transpired here today. And once again, on behalf of the eTecK team, I don't know if my chair would like to say some few closing remarks, but on behalf of all of us, I say thank you for having eTecK.
Thank you very much. All of our colleagues who have been here with us, we'd like to thank everyone. This meeting is now suspended. Thank you very much.